um, yeah, as I said, we are a group of activists from Global Action. And Global Action is this larger group. It's kind of a solidarity organization, and it kind of works with other social movements, grassroots movements, a lot of like people-driven movements in the Global South, and we try to support their mobilization and their fight for their economic and democratic and social rights. We generally work with structural inequalities, together with a lot of other political activists. Yes, so today we have, Today we have Ilham with us. She's an activist that works with Justicia Ambiental, or Friends of the Earth Mozambique, and she's going to talk about gas extraction in Mozambique and the fatal consequences it has for the local population, for the environment, for the climate. We will also be joined by a couple of Gastivists who are activists also within Global Action. Ludovica and Julie will be talking about how their work in Denmark and how they try to stop like Danish pension firms from supporting these extraction activities. And I guess lastly, we'll also tell you how to join the fight if you're in Denmark. Join us in Global Action, and help stop these horrible extraction activities. The presentation will be about 45 minutes, and then we'll have 10-15 minutes of questions. If you have questions during the webinar, please write in a chat, and we'll try to take them up after the presentation. Quick, just for the upcoming webinars. Next week, we'll have a webinar in Danish called Når virksomheder sagsøger stater, which is basically about how certain trade rules and trade agreements benefit companies and how companies can then sue the state. This generally hinders climate action, and it's absolutely horrible. Also, in our group, Climate Before Free Trade, we're going to have an activist school. It's going to be in the fall. Hopefully there'll be no more corona. So if you want to check that out, you can find it on our Facebook page as well. I guess that's all for now, and then I'll just give it all over to Ilham. And those.
Hi. Hi.
Yeah.
Do you hear me? All good?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. Thanks everyone for being here to hear about this issue. It's really important, and it's also really important for Danish people to understand it and to know why it's really important for you to lobby your banks and pension funds to get out of this industry. And then it's an extremely international issue. All the companies involved in the gas industry in Mozambique are international. So yeah, so thank you. I must give you a heads up. We're in a very strict lockdown in Cape Town, and I am at home, and my nephew is 4 years old, and he sometimes opens the door and runs into my room. So if that happens, just that it might happen. Okay, but I hope not. So just a heads up. Yeah, so what I thought about doing was just giving you sort of a basic introduction to the situation in Mozambique and to the campaign, and then show you a video that we made, because I think it's good for you to just have an idea of, like, to be able to see in your head the area that's being affected. So the No to Gas in Mozambique campaign has been going for about 2 years, and it's coordinated by Justicia Ambiental, Friends of the Earth Mozambique, which is my organization, and I coordinate the campaign. So the presence of gas companies really started in about 2017, and it's all the giants. It's Eni, ExxonMobil, Total, BP is one of the biggest buyers, Shell's one of the biggest buyers, and they basically, it's a textbook situation of extractive industry, you know. Coming to the global south, people have lost their lands en masse, people are starving. It's just a mess. So before I carry on, give you some more details and talk about the issues of militarization and attacks that have been happening, and just go into some more detail, I'm going to show you the video, and yeah, it's 6 minutes. But and just bear in mind, this was made at the end of 2018, and quite a lot happened since then, which I'll tell you. But it's just to give you a good idea of what the situation was and what's been and being lost. Okay, so should be this, and whoop.
Esta é a província de Cabo Delgado, em Moçambique. As pessoas que vivem aqui são camponeses, pequenos agricultores e pescadores. Os turistas estão a descobrir este belo litoral, mas uma enorme jazida de gás foi encontrada ao largo da costa. Companhias petrolíferas como a gigante norte-americana Anadarko, a Shell holandesa e a Eni da Itália estão a aproveitar esta oportunidade para fazer parte do boom do gás moçambicano. Para dar espaço para a exploração de gás e indústrias, milhares de pessoas serão desalojadas das suas vilas.
Ilham?
Yeah?
Can you pause the video?
Yeah.
It's not, showing up for me, or it's
is it showing up
frozen.
for anyone else?
It's frozen.
It's frozen?
Yeah, it's
now?
kind of weird.
Oh, it says, sorry. Bring your window to the front.
If you want, I think I have the link to the video as well, and I can show it from my screen share.
Okay.
Can you see the screen? No, it's not the shared screen.
Sorry, Natasha, I think it's not working.
No, there's no sound?
I think I'm going to try again from my side, otherwise...
Yeah,
yeah?
Sorry. But there was sound when you showed it. Oh yeah, I can...
What was the problem when I was showing it?
Is there sound now?
So can you close yours? Can you stop sharing your screen?
Yes, of course.
Itália está a aproveitar esta oportunidade para fazer parte do boom do gás moçambicano. Para dar espaço para a exploração de gás, indústrias e as instituições civis a usar
Ilham, can you try without muting yourself?
Mandio kati tupulira mandio kati tili kupata paka kusimba kuipika kulya ne vinana tili kusimba tukwa kusimba ndepi nawe pia timbulanga kuwaza wamisi inaja kuwaza sona nkati mukulira na kushanga.
O sentimento da comunidade é de viver com receios. Porque a empresa tinha como promessa, quando a pessoa perdesse a porção da terra, deveriam compensar com a mesma porção. Se alguém perdesse 10 hectares, deviam entregar 10 hectares, mas agora o que está-se a falar? Esse é de 1,5 hectare. Isso significa de que a promessa foi falsa. Portanto, dizer de que é muito lamentável, porque as promessas eram boas, mas não há nenhum cumprimento que se demonstra até agora. O que eu vejo que é muito importante que é a machamba, porque os nossos pais, os meus pais, deixaram-me de machamba. Então, se a empresa está me dizendo que uma coisa importante de que é a casa, para minha parte não vejo que é uma coisa importante. Porque tenho os meus filhos, querem comer, querem viver, querem estudar, e estão a estudar através dos meus coqueiros que deixaram os meus pais.
Os habitantes de Milamba e Quitupo serão transferidos para uma nova aldeia ao lado de Senga. Mas esta vila também está a ser ameaçada pela indústria do gás. A Shell quer construir uma refinaria de gás ao lado de Senga, num terreno que agora é usado pelos moradores para a agricultura. Cristina tem medo de perder o seu campo de arroz.
Essa machamba pertence à família desde os meus antepassados. Essa área tem importância muito. Até nós aqui confiamos nessa área para termos machamba. Toda a comunidade de Senga, as machambas deles estão aqui mesmo. Essa área que ele precisa. O Shell, quando vem aqui, não explicar nada. Eu acho nos deixar o nosso mato cultivar só. Porque nós estamos a viver por causa de cultivar, termos comida. Sem terra, não vamos produzir, não vamos viver.
As refinarias são muito poluentes para o meio ambiente. A perfuração de gás libera mais de 300 substâncias químicas causadoras de cancro nos humanos. Mais de 1000 substâncias fatais para o ecossistema e os animais. Qual será o futuro das pessoas em Cabo Delgado? Quem os protegerá? O gás não trará desenvolvimento a Moçambique. Os combustíveis fósseis, como o gás, o petróleo e o carvão, estão a contribuir para as mudanças climáticas que estão a matar o planeta, que já está a devastar vidas, especialmente aqui em África. O gás não é um combustível de transição. A sua produção e consumo emite dióxido de carbono e metano, e ambos aceleram a catástrofe climática. Nenhum moçambicano enriqueceu com a extração de petróleo e gás. Isso apenas tornou as pessoas mais pobres, desencadeou conflitos, aumentou as dívidas e devastou os meios de subsistência das populações, poluindo o meio ambiente. O gás em Moçambique já está a seguir esta triste tendência e tanto a população local como todo Moçambique irão sofrer. Precisamos separar com essa loucura e começar a pensar no que é melhor para Moçambique e para o seu povo. O gás não é a resposta. Nem a Anadarko, nem a Shell, nem os nossos governos se preocupam connosco. Nós temos de nos defender. Proteste, tome medidas legais e lute por leis obrigatórias para forçar as grandes empresas a manterem os combustíveis fósseis no solo.
Okay. Yeah. All good? Okay. So can I continue?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay. So I didn't say when we started. I hope everybody's safe and well in this crazy time that we're in. I know some countries are dealing with a lot more than others. Here, so I'm in South Africa, actually, not in Mozambique. And here we have one of the strictest lockdowns in the world, which means that a lot of people are losing their jobs, and a lot of people here are already on the brink of poverty or live in poverty. So, and are wage workers and don't get full salaries. Homeless people are being rounded up and put in relocation camps. So it's a real mess that we're seeing here. In Mozambique, it's 60 of the 76 total cases in Mozambique are in Cabo Delgado at a Total construction site in the gas region, actually. So yeah, let's get into it. So as you saw on the video, it's that is what Cabo Delgado looked like, and the gas region looked like in 2018. And some of the people, actually all the people that we spoke to in that video, have all been moved. So the fisherman, Mr. Burhani, who was speaking, the place where this village is or was, Milamba, is beautiful. It's like, as you saw, it's like something out of a movie. It's perfect sand and like turquoise water and just one fishing boat, completely quiet, and that's all gone. So those people who have been moved 10 kilometers inland, and the farmland that they received and the other communities that have been moved have received is a fraction of what they had before. So they had some people who had 10 hectares of land are only getting 1 hectare of land. So the whole compensation process has also been like a real mess. So basically what's happened is that the companies have come in. It's a multi-billion dollar industry, and there are 3 big projects. The one is Rovuma LNG, liquid natural gas, which is led by Eni and Exxon, and then there's Coral LNG, which is led by Eni, Exxon, and Gulp, and the Chinese National Petroleum Corporation. And then there is Mozambique LNG, which is led by Total. And it was initially an Anadarko project, but Anadarko was bought over by Occidental Petroleum. And when they did this, they sold the Africa assets to Total. So the Mozambique LNG project is now owned by Total. And the operations are slowly moving from one to the other. And this is also going to be really interesting to see which company is going to take responsibility for what's happened. If Anadarko is going to say, well, this is not our problem anymore, it's Total's problem. Or Total is going to say, well, what Anadarko did on the ground is not our fault. So that's definitely something that we need to keep an eye on. So where we're at is that 550 families have already been forcefully removed. Okay, and while the projects are going to be extracting gas offshore, they are onshore facilities that need to be built as support facilities. And Total is the one who's been in charge. They've been leading the process of actually building these facilities. So when people have been removed, it's Total, well, it was Anadarko, but it's Total that's now responsible for this. So they're doing the physical contracting of companies to move, that are involved in moving people, all the contractors that are around there, like building the ports, building the aerodrome, those are all contracted by Total. But what this means is that the leaders of the other projects, Exxon, Eni, Galp, they've all said, well, what Total's doing is, we're not doing it. We're just extracting offshore. But the facilities onshore are crucial for all of these projects. So they are actually all responsible for what's happening onshore. And this is something that they like to say. One of the things that we do in the campaign is we go to annual general meetings, and at all of them, and also with all the in-person meetings that we've had with companies who are not Total, they all said the same thing, which is what's happening on the ground is Anadarko's. Sorry, it's a bit confusing. What happens on the ground is Total's problem, but it's not. And that's really important to note, because this is something they will always push at you, and this is something that you always need to be able to push back. And I often will say, well, actually, it's on your own website. Like, there's a map that shows the Afungi LNG park that Total is building, where it says, like, on your website, there'll be a little color code. The yellow will be for Eni, and the blue will be for Total, and then an orange will be for Galp. So it's just bullshit, right? You're all responsible. So then you've got these forced removals of people, right? And they've completely lost their livelihoods. It's not a matter of we're going to be giving you a piece of land further away, and then you just, move from there to a relocation house that we've built, and you work on the farm over there. That's not how it works. These people have been here for generations, right? The area that they farm on, they've been farming on for a reason, because of the arability of it. And the fishing community that was moved 10 kilometers inland, the only access that they have to the sea right now is Total is offering them buses that they will take them once a day to another fishing community a little bit further away, where they can then fish. But this is not how fishing works, right? These are communities who live by the sea. They live by the tides. They live by the currents. And it's not like you can get on a bus at the same time every day and go to another community and fish and get what you need. These are people who would know when to go out at midnight, who would know when to go out at a different part of the day. So that's not working. And people are also really afraid to go to these new pieces of land because they're so much further away, because of the attacks that have been taking place, which I'll tell you about. Also, the land that Total has given to these communities as compensation, it's taken from another community, from a community called Senga. And what's now happened is that Total realized that they didn't actually they didn't actually consider how much land they would need, and they're now encroaching further and further into this community, which is obviously causing a lot of hostility. It's also quite a difficult time in Cabo Delgado because of these attacks that have been happening, that the government has blamed on Islamic jihadist terrorists, although that's not confirmed. But this is it's a very politicized province. It's where Frelimo was formed. And because of this situation, this hostility, this religious hostility, is being created because they're Muslim communities and Christian communities. So I don't know how much you know about these attacks, but since the end of 2017, there have been a lot of attacks by extremists and insurgents, and 100,000 people have been displaced already from their villages. They've attacked communities, but some reason none of the companies have been attacked. There was one attack on a Portuguese company called Gabriel Couto, which was in 2018, and one employee was killed, a Mozambican employee, of course, not a Portuguese employee. And this only happened after community started asking, like, you know, what's going on? Why did the attacks only start happening once the gas companies came in? So they feel quite strongly that there's a link between the attacks and the gas industry, but it's a very complicated situation. But what we do know is that it's not just a matter of Islamic terrorists trying to gain a foothold in Cabo Delgado. That's way too simple, and that's what the government's been pushing. But it also means that the areas become highly militarized. So there's a massive amount of troops that have been deployed. And what the government's been doing now is forced recruitment of boys they would see on the streets, pick them up, take them to military barracks, and send them to Cabo Delgado to allegedly protect the communities from these attackers. However, the communities are very afraid of them. They harass them. They're very intimidating. Recently, they've been banging on people's doors, arresting them, random people for, with false charges of being a terrorist or talking to terrorists, when actually these are the people that they arrest. Sorry, it's not random. Are people that the government is threatened by, activists or people who are speaking out against the government. And I mean, there's no freedom of speech there. Right now, there's a journalist who was arrested by the military about 2 weeks ago, and he's still missing. And lots of journalists over the last 2 years have been arrested on no charge or false charges, kept for months, and nobody's known where they are. So that's a big problem. And the thing about the militarization is the companies have so while the government says it's the military's there to protect the communities, actually Exxon, Total, and some of the companies, there was an article that came out in the Mozambican newspaper a few weeks ago. Exxon and Total they've called for the government to deploy more troops to protect them. And there was an article that spoke about, and I can share it if you like afterwards. There was an article that spoke about how companies, Total and Exxon, paid the Mozambican government to deploy more troops to Cabo Delgado. It was a confidential document, but it was exposed in this paper. So there's a lot of Mozambican tax money being used for these companies. And people have also been feeling like along with the militarization, there was also, and it's slowed down a bit now, but there was a massive private security industry that was flooding into the area. So there's a Russian company called the Wagner Group, and they are notorious. There are three Russian journalists who were killed in the Central African Republic when they went there to investigate Wagner's actions there. And the main financier of Wagner is a Russian man who's known as Putin's cook, because he had a lot of catering contracts with Putin. So they're untouchable. They were there. And it's a situation where, like with all extractive industries, where it's not just the oil or gas company or coal that benefits from an area. It's all the other industries that flood in after them. So the private security industry, the plastics industry, other contractors, the agrochemicals industry. It's like a new gold mine for them, to come in and get business. So people do feel like these attacks have been linked to the gas. And I'll just give you one example about how the attacks are quite convenient for the gas industry. So the community that you saw who are at the beach, that village is called Milamba. And there was an attack nearby a year ago, and the military was supposed to be protecting them, but was nowhere in sight. And people freaked out and left everything and ran away to Palma, which is the nearest town. They were planning on coming back, but Gabriel Couto, this Portuguese company that I spoke of, they're building an aerodrome right at that place. So that's where the planes are going to be landing. And they, within a week, had razed the houses in the village to the ground. And these people had no village to come back to. So there's actually a situation where people, even though they're in villages that are quite dangerous in that they are vulnerable to attacks, they're afraid to leave because they're afraid that if they do, a company will come and take their land and they won't actually have a village to come back to. So it's really complicated. But I want to go back to what I said about other companies coming in. One of them is Yara, which is a Norwegian company. And we know that they're there, but we don't know exactly the details of what they're doing, because this has been in news articles over the last 2 years, but it's actually very difficult to get information from them. But what people have told us is that there's this company called Yara, and they have met with us to teach us how to farm more on less. And there was another newspaper article that also said that they were there to purchase gas and use it to create fertilizer. So we're trying to get in touch with Yara, not really responding. So what we've done is we're trying to get a Norwegian journalist to help us with that, because we found that journalists often get a lot more responses than we do. And as Ludovica knows, when I was in Denmark, she tried for 2 weeks, I think, till 3 weeks to get a response from Rumble, this consulting firm. And it was only after she said we're going to take it to the media that they, say that they would actually respond. So that's then the environmental impact of these projects are heartbreaking. So there's an archipelago, a UNESCO biosphere called the Carimbas Archipelago, which is off the coast of Cabo Delgado, and this is home to hundreds of endangered species of flora and fauna and coral reef and turtles, and that are all going to be gone, And when we speak to the companies about this, and I mention it, Sasol, South African company, said, well, that's outside of the concession areas that we're going to be operating in. And I said, I'm sorry, the sea doesn't have a wall, just because it's technically 2 kilometers outside of your concession area doesn't mean that the dredging is going to create a problem, So that's going to happen. And the climate impact is, from what we know, is really bad. And we only know what we do from the environmental impact assessments that was done by Total and Eni. And I just saw that. That was done by Total and Eni, that says, and this is very conservative, but it says that just the construction element of one of the projects will increase the greenhouse gas emissions of Mozambique by 14% by 2022. So that's a a mess. And now I think I just want to tell you about a bit about the campaign, if I can, before we go to. So what we've been doing as the campaigns was, we got it off the ground at the beginning of 2017 when it was an issue that was coming up in Mozambique. And then Ja realized that we actually need to start like a full campaign on this because it's big. So we've got a lot of partners in the Friends of the Earth network, and then a few other organizations from other countries where the companies are based, who work with us on taking this issue to an international level, because it's so difficult, firstly, to raise any issues with the Mozambican government. Mozambican media, as I've just told you, is totally oppressed. And all the countries where these companies are from are international. So what we work on, the way we work is that our organization works very much with communities on the ground. And we have employees who live in the communities on the ground. So we would take the information from them to the international level. So when you sit down with companies, can say, can talk about how people have lost access to the sea, and they say, well, no, we've done everything according to the resettlement plan, and we can say, bullshit, here's a photo, So then what we do is go to AGMs, and we've been very lucky. Our partners get proxies for us to go to the AGM, so we can either ask questions there in person, or they'll ask questions for us. This year, the AGMs are all virtual, which is a bit of a pain because they've shut shareholders out completely. So, so we also hold in-person meetings when possible with companies and banks and financiers. The financiers go from private French banks, the big ones, to export credit agencies, and so it would be government finances and private finances that are involved in this. So we try and when we talk to them, we emphasize that we're not sitting at the table, we're not engaging with them and discussing with them. This campaign is one that when we talk with companies and industry players, it's very much an interrogation and a confrontation. And what we've learned from these talks, like when I was in Denmark and went with Global Action to Ludovica did an amazing job of organizing meetings with horrible people where we could go and talk to them about about using Mozambique as an example of why they should divest in these fossil fuel companies, because every single Danish pension, most Danish pension funds and every single Swedish pension fund invests in at least one of the companies involved there. So by being a company that invests in these projects, they're any financier is as guilty as any of the companies for what's happening on the ground. So that's actually one of my favorite parts of the job, is being able to take the information to white men in suits at a table who think they know everything, and then the question that you ask at the end is, can you say with complete certainty that no human rights are being violated by this project? And they all have this stupid, useless face that they can't really answer. I can talk for about another 10 hours on this, but I think I need to stop.
Yes. Okay, well, I guess we'll give the word to Ludovica. We'll talk about what she's been doing. And just.
Thank you. Thanks, Ilham, for the presentation. And thanks to the Klima for Frihandel group for organizing this webinar today, but also the series of webinars in the past few weeks. It's been really interesting to follow it. So I'm a part of the Actitivist group at Global Action, and we've been working together with the Justicia Ambiental for more than a year now, supporting their activities in Mozambique and in support of the local communities in Cabo Delgado, but especially also contributing to the global campaign, the No to Gas campaign, and especially translating it into relating it to the Danish context, just as Ilham has explained. And what we have done is we started by doing a research into the Danish pension funds and banks and looking at their investments. And from our research, it turned out that out of the 21 pension funds and banks that we looked into, all of them invested in at least one of the main companies that are leading the projects in Cabo Delgado, so Exxon, Eni, or Total. And all this information is included in a report that we published in the beginning of February. This report was shared in the Facebook event today, but I'm also linking it into the chat of the meeting right now if you would like to have a look at it. And then following this report and this research, as Ilham mentioned, we have started to engage and confront these investors. We had meetings with a few of them. And what was interesting is that it turned out that none of them knew about what was happening in Cabo Delgado. And that's especially interesting when these pension funds and banks parade on their websites how they do responsible investments and like they do active ownership, but then they don't even know about the companies that they invest in or the projects that their investments go into. We also discovered with these engagements a process where the pension funds and banks rely on screening companies to assess their investments and the social and environmental impacts of their investments. So kind of transferring the responsibility on these screening companies, but it obviously does not work because they don't know what's going on and what's happening. So this has been a very interesting journey, and we're continuing to engage with pension funds and banks, and we're also continuing to spread awareness about this and about how this, we are all involved in this as members of pension funds and clients of banks, because this is where our money is going to, of course, not just to gas in Mozambique, but to tons of projects around the world that private companies are involved in. And our link is the investments of our pension funds and our banks. And we encourage everyone to be aware of the investments that our banks and pension funds make, to demand that this changes, to demand that the pension funds and banks disinvest from this kind of investments, or just to change bank and find a different one. Yeah, so it's really about taking this global campaign and making it relevant in the Danish context. And together we can make a difference. So yeah, this is what I have to say. I don't know if Ilham, you want to add more about this. Otherwise, also Julie, who's also a member of the Actitivist group, has a few words to say about the project work of the group. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we'll go to Julie and then take some questions afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, what I wanted to say was, well, I'm also an activist in Global Action, and I'm part of the project and the campaign. Yeah, so I don't know how many people in this call are not from Global Action, but yeah, if you are in Denmark and not an activist already, I want to encourage you to join us if you're interested in these things. Yeah, and I thought maybe I could just say a little bit about what it entails to be an activist in Global Action. And so in this group, we because we have this project together with our partner in Mozambique, which is funded by a public donor called SISU, we actually have a lot of project management as activists, because we are accountable to the donor, so we have to make sure that we are keeping with all the requirements and so on, and that we're doing the monitoring, evaluation, and reporting correctly. And for example, now with Corona, we had to stay in contact with CISU and find out what were their requirements. Now that a lot of things have to change, a lot of activities maybe will not be possible. That has been like that for many projects. And then talk to our partner and discuss it and find good solutions together. So yeah, so this is a lot of what we do, and then of course we have the whole campaign side, which Ludovica has just talked a lot about. Yeah, where we focus on you can say like showing how these issues that seem global are actually very related to our lives in Denmark. And that from our privileged position, we can actually affect the political structures. We can try to. So if you're interested in becoming an activist, you don't have to be interested in all of these things. You can also be part of some part of the project activities. Yeah, and anybody who wants to join any of the groups in Global Action can write to the Global Action email. I think I can just post it here in the chat. I think that's it.
Yes. Great, thank you so much. So right now, if anybody has questions to any of the speakers, somebody asks if that would be paid work. I guess that goes to you.
No, almost everybody, all the activists in Global Action are volunteers, and yeah, and so the organization has this structure so that the money we get for projects are going to salaries in the Global South, not here in Denmark, and then there are a few paid employees in the organization.
Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, I also have one for Ilham. You hear a lot like the industry argues that they bring jobs and money and all that to like the Mozambican people. And I was wondering, well, how much of that is true? How much does all this oil benefit Mozambique? Yeah, that would be all. Oh, you're not on the speaker.
Yeah, no. It's all crap. Look, 27% of Mozambique has access to electricity, right? It's an extremely corrupt country. The UN called the last election very corrupt. And the extractive industry has been there for a long time, and if that was actually true, then people wouldn't still be living in poverty, you know? And this is something we ask these companies is, like, you keep talking about how this is going to benefit the Mozambican people, and, you know, are you saying that we shouldn't invest at all? But it's like, well, none of this has worked before. So what do you think makes you special? Can you show us a pathway that you have with the Mozambican government? Can you show us a pathway of your own? And no, you know, and then with that, their response often is, well, you know what, we give what we need to the government, and what happens after that is not our problem. But that's extremely irresponsible. And I once said to them, I find your nonchalant attitude to corruption very disturbing, because this is something that these companies and countries often call out countries in the global south for, is for, you know, you're too corrupt, the government mustn't be this corrupt, but then they benefit from it, you know, enabling it. So no, that's it. There's no such thing as a trickle down effect in the extractive industry. And there's not been a single job created. The jobs that have been created in Cabo Delgado have been for foreign nationals, and they've been menial jobs. There's no pathway for employment. There's no programs set up for any skilled labor that would have had to start years ago. So no. no, them being there is just detrimental. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's great. I guess Natalie has a question in the chat as well. I don't know if you want to ask it out loud or if I should just read it.
Do the Mozambicans know about this? Is there someone from Mozambique? My organization is Mozambican. Justiça Ambiental is Mozambican. It's Friends of the Earth Mozambique. I work remotely because I work on the international campaign. So it's a lot safer as well to be working on this from outside of the country. But I mean, it's very we're Mozambican.
Yeah. Great. Is there any other questions?
I have a question. I
Great,
was
Ingrid.
wondering, I don't know that much about the different companies involved, but I guess that some of them would be majority owned by states, and if there's any difference in the way you're campaigning or working to influence them, such as Yara, which is majority owned by the Norwegian state.
Yeah, so Statoil is only coming in, they've applying for concession areas, but they haven't actually started looking for financing it. But yes, there are a lot of the financiers are export credit agencies. Export credit agencies are state entities that loan money to companies from that country for projects elsewhere that will bring benefit to this country. And then there's also export-import banks who then give these companies insurance that they can pay back the loans to the export credit agencies. So the biggest export credit agencies involved here are that of the Italian government, the Dutch government, Portugal, the US, and Korea as well. And a lot of the countries as well, governments are going to be buying gas. So the Indian government, Chinese government, Japanese, they're also going to be buying gas. So we deal with them differently so we deal with both, and different partners in the network deal with one more than the other. So for example, Friends of the Earth, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, they specifically deal with the British government. So they're working on a campaign to get the UK Foreign Development Agency to not support gas in Mozambique. And the US, Friends of the Earth US, has also been lobbying for the US Export-Import Bank to not support gas in Mozambique, because the Export-Import Bank, the new head of that is one of Trump's besties, and last year they approved a loan of $5 billion to Mozambique Gas, which is the biggest loan ever that Export-Import, that the US Exxon has ever given. So yeah, so we work on both. And in different countries, different ones are more perceptive than others. We also spoke to parliamentarians at the EU level in Brussels. So it goes across as many sort of national, regional levels, private companies, public as possible.
Yes, thank you. I guess this will be the last question, just a quick one. From Julie, she says if you could talk about how the disinvestment strategy, why is it better than staying as investor and affecting the companies as most of the pension fund and banks do? Why is this disinvestment a good strategy?
Can I go, Ludwika?
Yeah.
Okay. It's well, so this is what all the pension funds have told us. Like we're one of the good ones, and we're one of the ones who keep pushing for them to act responsibly. But then they also say we're so small that if we pull out, it's not going to make a difference. But that completely contradicts itself. So if you're so small, sorry, it's looking at my nephew. If you're such a small shareholder, then why would they care that you You know, why would they care about what you're lobbying for inside anyways? So it doesn't really make sense. Also, the more of you pull out, the fewer are going to want to invest. So it's, yeah, no, I don't think that makes sense at all. Yeah. And also, sorry, there's also the reputational damage that comes with pulling out is very big. Yeah.
I guess another last question, because we have 2 minutes, is Kamal, who says, I find it interesting to approach the issue on EU level. Is there anyone working with the issue on an EU level, especially having in mind their aspiration for a green economy?
Yeah, so we are, but doing it mostly with Friends of the Earth Europe. So last year when I was in Europe, went to the shareholder meetings, we also had a meeting with parliamentarians in Brussels specifically about this. So yeah, and I mean, I know they've got they've done, yeah, they're doing some interesting stuff on fossil fuels. So yes, and we want to be working more with them on an EU level. But if there's Kamal, if you do any specific work on an EU level that you think could benefit this, or then yeah, get in touch.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put my email address here. If anyone wants to contact me, just yeah.
Yes, and also I guess just a comment, because Europe has, or EU has tried to make this Green Deal. I think there are some criticisms definitely that they think liquid natural gas is greener than fossil fuels, which again is what's being extracted from Mozambique. So maybe not as much as they claim to. But yeah, I guess this will be the end of the meeting. Thank you everybody for coming. Again, next week we'll have a meeting in our webinar in Danish. So for all Danish speaking people, feel free to register. It's going to be very interesting as well. Also have some, I guess, how EU trades or as well. Yeah, and that's everything. Thank you so much. Write to Ilham if you want to. Yeah. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. and thank you to Ilham and Ludwika and Julie and all the like Actitivist group and Friends of the Earth. Like, you do amazing work. It was great hearing from you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.